first of all, I should apologise for wearing these glasses. I'm not trying to look like an aged rock star, but they're for visual stress and my sort of form of dyslexia. So anyway, so let's start. Actually, I never know what I'm going to say, as most people who hear me know, but I'm going to start about London because I came, and I think it's slightly diversionary, but it's not. I'll get it back on track. Can somebody just tell me when I've got 5 minutes left, because I've got no idea of time or whatever. Anybody? Yeah, lovely. So I came over Westminster Bridge this morning, and it really makes you think. And it made me think of Londoners that have really affected the way that we work at Big Issue and Big Issue Invest and all the things we've done. So I'm going to start off, and I thought this is pertinent because there's a lot of people not from London here, so I apologise about this, but coming over that bridge and seeing the flowers and seeing what happened really made me think this morning coming here. And I'm going to start with Charles Dickens, one of the great Londoners, who said, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of reason, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light, it was a season of darkness. It was a spring of hope, it was a winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us." And that's the beginning of Tale of Two Cities. And I think it really is about the divide, that why we're in this room is we're here to dismantle poverty. We're here to do that, the Big Issue group, by creating opportunity. We're going to do that by self-help. We're going to do that through social trading. And we're going to do that through business solutions. And it is a dividing line that I think we are at this moment. Those of us who have been on this journey for a while have been saying that a while, but there's a real feeling now that there is this divide. And if we get it right, if we get the aligned, if we bring the mainstream to us, I'm going to go on a roll here. What I don't, the idea that social investment is now part of the mainstream is absolutely what we're not about. We're here in this room because the mainstream screwed it up. There's a market failure, a social market failure, a financial market failure. So why do we want to imitate what that mainstream does? What we're saying is we have solutions to dismantling poverty. We're going to use business, we're going to use capitalism, but we're going to bring the mainstream to what we're doing. There's no point just getting absorbed and in 200 years... another one, Tom Paine, great hero Tom Paine, who said in 1796, it won't be from the difficulty that loans can be procured that the system will break up. On the contrary, it will be the ease that loans can be procured that will hasten that event. Well, that was written in 1796, but it could have been written in 2007. And unless we decide that we're going to grab this and change this, in 200 years, we will be doing the same things. We've had an empire, we've had a philanthropy based on, in America, on the excesses of a civil war and robber barons. We've had philanthropy in the UK based in the 19th century exploitative empire. We've had philanthropy based on dot-coms. We've had philanthropy based on hedge funds. We're going to have philanthropy based on nano whatever. And unless we grab philanthropy, unless we say it's not about just using the excesses to dismantle poverty, it's not just about having old systems of business to dismantle poverty, what we're doing is forging something absolutely new. And that's what we're doing in this room. I've kind of gone way off the point there, haven't I, really? So, the big issue. If I came to you 25 years ago and John Bird, Gordon Roddick came and said, look, we're going to start a magazine and in 25 years' time it's going to sell 200 million copies. In the UK, it's known as the best-known social brand in the UK. The Guardian has said we're the last bastion of independence reporting in the UK. We've replicated this in about 104 different times in about 35 different countries. We will sell 84,000 copies a week to about 400,000 readers. It'll be sold by 1,500 people every week, our vendors. This last year, we would have won the Editor of the Year. We did win the Editor of the Year award, Magazine Editor of the Year award. We're going to get stars in this magazine to write. Beauty and the Beast. So Emma Watson and Dan Stevens. Emma, who's been a great supporter of the Big Issue, has written, this is a feature by Emma Watson, Beauty and the Beast, not talking about Beauty and the Beast, she's talking about why she's supporting our campaign to save libraries. And we're going to make a 20% pre-tax profit, 7% of that we will keep in reserve, and 14% we'll reinvest that in our vendors. But by the way, I need to tell you that this is going to be sold by homeless people and vulnerable people and people affected by poverty on the streets. And by the way, that we're going to charge these people money to buy this magazine. They're going to buy it for £1.25, sell it for £2.50. Each one of them has their own business. Each one of them will be earning a wage rather than begging or steal or prostitution or street crime. And we're going to make all this money, and then we're going to mug ourselves on the back to the bank, and we're going to give it back into our own business to reinforce our business. And that's what John and Gordon did in 1991, and I think changed that nature of what social enterprise is. And it took it into this area. So how on earth did we get to do a social merchant bank? We ask ourselves that all the time. And what is a social merchant bank even? It was a dream. We always were the biggest financial includer outside government and charity or of excluded people. We ran a little scheme where vendors could save money and to stop them being 30% of our vendors were being robbed on the street to save money. And then if they wanted to use that money, we would give them back. And then in about 2000, HBOS, as it was then the bank, had put a branch of the bank in our office in Glasgow. And that was extraordinary because homeless, vulnerable people, often without an address, could get a basic bank account. And it was an incredible step forward. And they won a big award in business in the community. And they said, well, why don't we do more of this? And John Bird had been working on something called social brokers in the UK. I'd been in the States learning about social finance from people like the Corporate Social Venturing Network, whatever. And when I came back, we started to think about what we could do to scale this up. And that's what we did. And in 2006, I drew a map. My chair at the time said it was a very colourful drawing because I can't really write. I can only do diagrams. And it really was this idea of a merchant bank, a social merchant bank. It was that old idea that if you are, as an investor, we can do anything from give your money away to do early stage funds, to do lending, to do investment funds, to put it in the public retail market. And if you're a social venture, we can do anything from build your capacity all the way through to if you're a listed company, invest in you. And it was that idea that you brought everybody together. I didn't have a clue because I'm not a financier. What we knew was from the bottom up, this is what the sector needed. And it was an instinctive view that most of which has come off quite by chance. It was other people brought it off, not me. So this is what we do. And I'm going to start on the rental exchange. And really, I suppose the theme of this is about bottom-up change. And I think there is a real danger in our sector, which I'm sure we'll talk on the panel, is that you have people that have not been in the trenches fighting poverty, deciding how poverty needs to be dismantled. And it's that thing about how you bring people in and you start to get those changes from a bottom-up way. And I think part of what Toby was talking about before is this kind of thing between the finances and the social enterprises is how you bring them together to speak the same language, how you say good morning in the same language, how you fight in the same language. So in the rental exchange there on the right-hand side, we one of our members of staff's dad died, and he'd been homeless and he'd been on the streets, and he'd got a flat. He died an alcoholic, and when the member of staff went into the flat, there was nothing in there. And he said, that's not how my dad wanted to live. His dad couldn't get credit. And so he was at the mercy of the money lenders, the baseball bat people, the doorstep lenders, and the rest of it. So we started to think about how people getting accommodation could get credit. And we talked to the housing associations. And in the end, we realised, well, actually, we kind of moved on, that people, if you pay your mortgage on time over a period of time, you get a greater credit score. If you're in social housing and you pay your rent on time over a period of time, you can't get a credit score, better credit score, because you're in social housing. It's seen as negative data. And so what we said, no, that is positive data. And so we worked with Experian, and we got a business partnership with Experian, and we now have 1.5 million live tenants' feeds of their rent data going into Experian credit scores, and we are potentially raising the scores of 2.7 million people in social housing in the UK, and we're giving 1.9 million people a digital footprint. And I'm really proud of that transformational thing. But it was bottom up. It was made, we thought of it because we thought of our own vendors and what they were going through. We've got, I'm speeding up here, I think I better. We've got the Corporate Social Venturing Programme, which is really early stage venturing. And what we've done is we've used the corporates, and Barclays have now sponsored us for the second time round on that. And have led that, and it's using corporates to help early stage ventures scale up. And it's not volunteering. They stay with them with the ventures for 2 to 3 years. We've had Barclays, Merrill Lynch, Experian, Mighty, Salesforce, BT, you name it, coming in and really helping those enterprises grow. And we have a 10% attrition rate on very early stage ventures because those corporates don't want to let go. We go into a thing called, I called it the caterpillar's cocoon because it's not the dragon's den. It's about how you build businesses up. And we've just had the first, well, not the first, one of the great scale-ups. In the UK, 1 million, over about 1.25 million women can't go to work. Because they can't leave the house for whatever reasons. Digital Mums teaches them to be social media community managers. They then pair them up with local small businesses, charities and social enterprises who can't afford full-time social media managers, and you've got a really simple outsourcing business there which is scaled, and it's now got investment from a very well-known tech investor and the partners of M&C Saatchi's. So it's really that kind of early stage. We then, that's up to 50,000. We then have a loan book lending. So it's off our own balance sheet. And we have a series of funds on that. What we're doing in there is I really want to redefine language. How long have I got, by the way? Okay, go. I really want to define language, right? I don't know if we've got it up there. Why do bankers talk about loan loss rates, right? It's a completely bizarre concept, right? Because I've said we're banning that. We're now talking about loan success rates, right? And so we've got a loan success rate in lending of last resort of 99% of some really risky asset, non-asset, cash flow back lending. And part of that is because our staff work in the Big Issue. We sit in the same room. I'm chair of the Big Issue and Big Issue Invest. We sit in the same room. Our staff go out and see what our staff on the ground are doing with the magazine. And what we're trying to do is get the staff to think like they are a social enterprise. They are a social entrepreneur. And it's interesting, in our loan department, in our loan part of it, we don't have anybody from a finance background. But what they do is they can see the social value of it. They can see whether the entrepreneur and the team can organise a piss-up in a brewery. They can see if it's a good idea. And then we look at the numbers, and it really is trying to get people to think from the bottom up what it is to be a business, what it is to make sure every month that the wages can be paid and so on, because it's our experience of building businesses and trying to imbibe that. We then have started these limited partner funds. We've got 3 of those. One is an outcomes fund. Interestingly enough, I wasn't a great fan, as Toby knows, of SIBs in many ways. And so when my investment director said, we're going to go for this outcomes fund, mandated it, I was saying, well, I don't want to do this really. And then I thought, well, why? Why am I just being an oppositionalist? Why don't we just take and say, what is it about it that we want to do? So what we've done is we said it's for social enterprises. The first thing we're going to do is saying, as Toby said, actually payments results like in France will be going 40, 50 years. It's about, can we put the working capital into those organisations so that they can actually have that time lag before we look at a SIB? And so taking some real risk on working capital of smaller social enterprises. And the next thing we've done, like we have on our other investment committees, we make sure the investment committees is about, has representative of the social entrepreneurs on the investment committee. So, for example, in the Outcomes Fund, we have the Deputy CEO of Social Enterprise UK, which is the network. We have somebody from Thamesreach, the CEO of Thamesreach, who issued their own bond sitting on there, because we really want to get the entrepreneurs on those investment committees, so it's not just about that financial decision, it's bigger than that. And I think Gail yesterday was talking about culture and all those things, and you embed the culture of social entrepreneurship, you embed the values of dismantling poverty by the people who are doing it in the financial institutions. That is the challenge. That's how I think you create that culture. Then I was going to, I was speaking at the Centre for Financial Innovation, and somebody said, why can't the ordinary big issue reader invest in your funds? Those LPs, you've got Deutsche, HSBC, you've got the high net worths, you've got wealth people in there, all the rest of it. You've got foundations investing, but the big issue reader can't invest. And I thought, you are absolutely right. What we're trying to do is change the hearts and minds of people to say that you can use finance and you can create great things with your savings, you can, and so on. It's not something that's nasty and bad if we do it right. So we invented, and we got Columbia Threadneedle on with us, the UK Social Bond Fund, which is the first retail daily tradable social impact fund in the UK. And it's actually investing in corporate bonds that we think are creating social value in the UK, and we've developed a methodology of doing that. We're just about to launch with a huge, second biggest in Europe, asset manager, an equity fund, which is all about investing in listed companies that are creating sustainable jobs. I've got a few minutes left. Sustainable jobs. And so what you've got here, and we've got a third fund which we're talking about. I get these ideas, and the poor staff, I do worry for them sometimes. But the key is, and the real key is, getting the right people with you that want to come onto this journey. And what we've done, actually, we've incubated the ideas outside the main, and it's just been an interesting way of doing it. So not to overburden the staff with 104 ideas every morning, but to take, if you like, that innovation and that R&D outside the company, seed it, and then bring it back in again. So there you have this thing about the social merchant bank. And what it is that you can do anything from, as we say, from the early stage right through to the public retail. And we blend everything around. Talk of language. Actually, there's a nice language. It took me ages to find out an alternative expression for impairment rate, another negative word in funds, so I'm using capital preservation. But the one thing that I do think about around all this is I really do not want to hear, and I've gone mad on, so when I've heard people talking about trade-offs. about subsidy, about all that. That's not what it's about. What we've got right across here is a blended social and financial return. It's not that our large public retail funds subsidise what we're doing in the early. It's a blended return right across that. And I think because of that, and because we see it as a holistic whole, if you like, it means that financially it makes sense because we can spread. If we just did one of those things, I think we might be, we'd struggle because I don't think that market is big enough. So finally, as I'm wrapping up, you'll be pleased to hear, right? I think I want to come back to that idea about the bottom up and not the top down. I think one of the real dangers we face, and the best of times and the worst of times, is that now is how do we get everybody aligned? How do we get the so-called mainstream coming into our sector to understand? I think we know from way back, going back to the early 2000s in the financial, social, financial, whatever it was called then, is that supply arguments in this sector don't work. What we really hate is demand, and there is a real danger, as Toby said. I said it at the G8. I said, there is 3 trillion, billion, whatever pounds in this room. I'm not sure one of you would have ever invested if John or Gordon had come with a big issue with a crazy idea. What we've got to do is really look at where this demand is coming and how we fuel this demand. Because just by putting the supply in, I'm not sure it is a real remedy to dismantle poverty. But what I can say is this room is just brilliant, because what we're seeing is in the 15, 20 years we've been doing this, when I remember going to a conference to speak on this and it was cancelled. I was cancelled, not the conference, because there's only 10 people in the room, right, and whatever. And what is great to see is people here, and people like all the people in this room coming here and saying, actually, we can do this. We can really change this world. Finance is just a tool. It's nothing more than a tool. Big Issue Invest doesn't create any social impact. Not an ounce of social impact. Maybe it does because we employ people or whatever we do. It's not us that do it. What we are, we're an aggregator, we're a facilitator, we're a catalyst for all those social businesses on the ground who are fighting in the trenches for a better world. And having everybody here like you along with that fight is something that I think we can only just say, that's great. So thank you.